I had a little technical issue with the filming of this project, so this is the carriage assembly that I was planning to use. It's the one to the 1896 and 1897. I've already done everything on it now. Unfortunately, I don't have a recording of any of it. I'll spare you the details, but it came out nice. It works fine. It's clean. It's serviced completely, and that's about all I'm going to say about that one. What I'm going to do is continue. This is a pressure roller off of an 1898 machine that's in quite bad condition. This pressure roller I already took care of, so I will disassemble this one. This is off of a 1904 Blickensderfer No.5. It has the paper rest on the back, which is just sprung in, so that's easy to remove. That's the difference. These frames are slightly different. There's a few small differences in these mechanisms, and this one does have a second carriage stop for the opposite direction, for the right-hand margin. The earlier ones did not have that. And also, this tooth piece that you will see me remove, that's right there, that has two holes in the later one, which makes it very nice to remove, because I can take this tool, put it in the holes, and unscrew it. Unfortunately, the earlier ones only had a single hole, so it's quite a bit more difficult, but I was able to get it off. That basically is threaded on. It's a part of the feed mechanism for the paper, and basically this piece here has a very small feature that embeds itself into those teeth to advance it. This whole setup here just kind of preloads the platen, so it's not moving side to side. The later ones had actually a four-piece, four ears on it, a spring that was part of this mechanism here, or this indicator, and that gave the preload. It's a little bit nicer, but this works fine, and it's easier to take apart and put back together because there are less pieces here. This one also has one less lever. I'm going to do a video in the end that shows the differences between basically the evolution of these machines, how things changed and what changed in them. The other thing about this one here is that these frames that hold the platen that had to be removed, those are shimmed, and the shims actually tilt the whole platen back into a different position. It's further back. Different shims were required to put it central to the type wheel so that it wasn't off center. Later on, the 1898 machine that this roll came out of, which is a parts machine, this 1904, the frames are slotted so you can adjust them. It's always a good idea to make a mental note of exactly how they were when you started. And then when you finish and you get it back together, you can lower the type wheel down onto it in a neutral position and see that the radius here matches the radius on the actual character. Basically that it's centered. And you'll see it when you type. Either the top or the bottom will be faded if it's not on center. And then you can just remove the bell, remove this thumb wheel, remove that serrated tooth again, which will have already been removed because you serviced it, so they're quite easy to remove afterwards. And then just undo those screws, get it right where you want it, sock it down, make sure you get it on both ends, because what's good here isn't necessarily good there, and then just put that hardware back on. So anyway, we'll be removing everything on this, and this one needed a little more polish anyway, so it's a good candidate. I don't want to mess with this one. It's already back together, it's already clean, it's already adjusted. So here we go. All right, after the penetrating oil has had a chance to do what it does, we start the disassembly. I'm going to just remove the wire frame here first. That's quite easy. The bail here that releases the carriage is also easy to remove. It is basically the same as removing that wire rack. Pull out one side and the other side is free. These extension springs can be a little bit of a nuisance, and you may want to take some pictures before you remove anything. It would be a good idea to take a picture of how this spring goes in. I have a couple machines for reference, and I also, this machine itself, I've had it apart before. I'm just going to slide this out rather than remove it off the frame. I don't want to distort the opening on there. So once that is out, I'll put that the same way as I disassembled it, because I'm not taking pictures here. The next thing to do would be to remove this thumb wheel and to remove the bell and then the tooth part behind it. But before I remove that, I'm going to remove this, because while I'm removing that, if the teeth engage and I force anything, I may damage the small feature that gets inserted into those teeth, and I don't want to do that. So I'm gonna spin this nut off real quick. That's the quarter inch nut driver. Then the bell, that is also threaded on the inside, so you spin that out. The nut acts more like a lock nut than anything else. Then I'm going to remove this piece here, and this is what actually advances where's the lever to advance the paper. Gonna take that off, and there is a little spring on this one that you want to make sure you know how it catches. It actually catches on that little pin right there. The other one doesn't have a spring. The earlier one, it just relied on itself to naturally find its position, which actually always seems to work fine. Then I'm going to spin this nut off. In this case, it's not overly tight. It's not seized up from years of being in place. So this one just spun right off. And now I can get to these screws. Before I couldn't. This is the actually actuates the bell. So when the carriage comes to a certain point, it goes to there and then it releases, hits the bell. Each variant of these machines in each generation had a different bell, a different mechanism for actuating it. So, but we're working on number 5 today. And then I also have a nut on this thumb wheel, same as the other side. And that spins right off too. This never goes against a shoulder or anything else. It's just in place. The play in the longitudinal play there is taken up on this end. So now I have it in a position where on both ends I can easily get to the screws. And I can see I have a little cleaning to do here still. And I definitely didn't over clean this one when I serviced it. It's functional and it's fine, but it could have been better. So that's why I'm taking this one apart rather than the other one. These screws, don't over tighten your screws. They're not under that much force. So, and you also need a fairly narrow screwdriver to get in here to avoid the other hardware. And this one, even though I have everything removed, you can see that it's still not perfectly, to get to it, it's not perfectly vertical, but we do the best we can. Loosen the screws up on both ends. And again, make a mental note of what you have for space here. If you have a good rule or scale, you can see that that's about 50 thousandths on that end, and on this end it's actually about 80. So it's a bit of a difference end to end on this. Just a good reference, and it doesn't hurt to write things down as you go. So I got 50 and 80. I'm just going to go with it, but because I'm going to check the adjustment of these when I get it back together anyway, and I'll probably put it central. I'll put them same on both ends. I'll put them 50 and 50, and then I'll see how it works once it's installed in the actual machine and take care of it then. So it's really not that critical at this point to me. It's a little difficult sometimes getting to some of these areas to even remove the screw, and it's worse getting them back in. What I like to do is put one end of the frame back on. At least I have that screwed in place, or roughly screwed in place, snugged up or even slightly loose. And then I only have to mess with the other end. So it saves me half of the hassle of trying to get these little screws into place at that point. So again, they go in there, and again, I have a nice catch tray here, so it's kind of a luxury. So once I do have it to this point, this rod here will slide out of this end. It has a nut on both sides here to secure it, and but it's not necessary really to remove that end unless you absolutely have to. So, and when I pull this out, this indicator here is also going to come off. So, like I said, I like to put things the way I took them off. So here we are down to this. Now this little unit here, you have to make sure you get right. This screw here adjusts how much it feeds, how many lines it feeds at one time. So it's kind of obvious how it goes back together. This is just a washer here, and then this all just lifts right off, and I'm going to put that as it was. So the platen on this one is actually in excellent condition. There's no real ink on it or anything, and no cracks. If you do have to replace one of these, you usually have to send it out. They're fairly thick, and it probably costs you between $100 and $200. Some people use thick heat shrink, and they'll actually use a different layer for here, so they still have the step. I suppose that works fairly well. I haven't tried it yet, so I don't really know. Now we're up to this part here. These little tiny torsion springs. They just catch onto this frame here. You don't want to lose these. And then if you rotate them back, you'll free this end, this hook here, and they come right off. And then this whole assembly can just slide off the other end usually. Yep. So, and then here's the spring. And again, I like to leave them like that. And we're most of the way done. You want to, or you probably will want to clean this frame up. I can still see the witness lines where this is out, where the top frame is always sat. So that's nice. I can, I'm not going to over clean that. There's really no reason to. It's not a surface that is a wear surface or anything else, so it's really not an issue. So now I'm left with the roller, which I can't remove at this point because these frames are pinned in place. And I'd said earlier that they were 1/16 of an inch. That's not true. They're almost 3/32 of an inch. They're actually 86 thousandths of an inch. So you do have some extra space around this, which is about 1.5 millimeters, so a little bit short of a 1/16 of an inch. What I do here is I put it right on there, and you have to be fairly careful and deliberate. You don't want to hit the casting here because you don't want to displace any material and damage the entrance to that hole. So often I stand up doing this, but so I put that on there. I just have there's a tool maker's hammer. Very gently tap it. These have already been out, so it's not going to be a problem getting them out. They can be fairly tough to get out, and this was part of the reason for removing the whole assembly, because you really can't get to these very easily. And you don't have to remove them all the way to get this framework out. And to get the roller off, I don't really have to remove both sides. But what I do need to do is drive one of these pins all the way out so I can remove this part here. And that, because I also want to, when I go to drive the pin back in, I still have to do it from the outside, so I do have to have it fully out. And what I did on mine, they weren't perfectly straight, and they have a bit of corrosion on them. Typically, I can do this here and not worry too much about where the pin goes because I have my catch tray. But if you don't, I suggest, either putting a towel down or something so it doesn't bounce, or get an old school lunch tray and work within that so you have some borders. So now I can remove this part, and this is of course turned around now. And now the roller comes out. This is one that was already serviced, so I'm not going to do this one because it wouldn't really demonstrate what I want to do. And I think I will also, I'm going to leave this side in. These frames have already been cleaned up and polished, so I don't really need to remove both of them. It wouldn't hurt anything, but it's kind of a waste in this case. Okay, to remove the old rubber, it's always hard and fairly rotted basically. So rather than try to cut it and risk injuring myself, I'll take a pair of pliers and I'll just start to snip it right at the edge. And I'll spare you the whole process, but it takes a few minutes to get it off. They were held on with some adhesive, so there will be some residue there that you'll have to remove later on with either some fairly fine abrasive, which takes it off quite quickly, or you can use Scotch-Brite or whatever you feel like using. But basically, remove the residue, chip it off completely, remove the residue, and then we'll be ready to put a new piece of silicone on there. Before I cut the new piece of rubber, what I do is I measure how far from the end to where I want to cut it off is when it's finished. And right there, it's about 5/16 to the end of that little chamfer. And the same on both ends. Every one I've done is approximately the same. And then I'll take a piece of silicone, and I like to cut a piece about 5 inches long, which gives me a little bit of extra. So, has a little bit of a curve to it, not an issue. It cuts very easily. Just be careful always using a blade, of course. And then I want to measure it again to make sure that this is just about 5 1/8 inches long. The reason for measuring is because I want it to be the same length once I get it on there. So I know if it has any bulges or if it's hung up anywhere, which I want it to be basically the same diameter, the full length. They said this is it's silicone, high pressure silicone vacuum hose, 3/16 of an inch ID, 3/8 of an inch OD, which brings it to pretty much exactly the size that Blickensderfer used originally. And the reason for high pressure silicone is so that it won't take a permanent set. So when it's against the platen, it will not get deformed, and it'll stay good probably for another 100 years. And so what I do is I take some hairspray, and that allows me some lubrication on the shaft itself while I'm sliding the silicone on. And then once it dries, it'll hold it there like glue. It's really not going anywhere anyway because it's fairly tight fit, but it doesn't hurt. So I like to go in from above and keep pushing from slightly above the end of the shaft. And what that does is it keeps expanding the silicone. And one other precaution is that you want to keep the journal nice and straight so you don't bend it. And you really don't want to stop for too long because it starts to set up fairly quickly. Once you get it down there, you want to keep working it until it's full length. 5 1/8 was what I had, just under right now. So it's over the whole length. It's pretty straight still. And there we are, right at the finished length. And I'm going to cut a little bit off initially so that I can still measure from the ends when I put tape on to cut it. So, as always, be careful using a blade, and take your time. If it doesn't work out the first time, just cut a new piece of tubing and slice the old one and start again. So I have a piece of painter's tape in position. It's just over 5/16 of an inch from the end. If it comes out a little bit further in, it's not going to hurt anything. What I want is a fairly straight line so it's not, it doesn't stand out. So I'm going to put the nice sharp blade right against the tape, and I'm going to roll the part. Very slowly, very carefully, preserving my fingers, and I will eventually feel it hit the metal. I want it to feel it all the way around, and it just pops right off. And so then we do that with both ends, and last thing I do after I do that is that I dull the entire surface, and the reason for that is because I don't want it to really stand out as being a new piece of rubber. I'm trying to make this entire machine look basically like it's just a well-preserved machine rather than something that's gone through a restoration.